Okay, here we are with Eric Bissell, Paul Berry, and Fred Buis. What we were discussing previously to making the video was how to describe what we're doing in this video. I think the best way to describe it is the purest water is found at the top of the mountains, and as it flows downstream it gets polluted, and we want to get back to the top of the mountain. Take it away.
Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ, Yahuwah, Mashiach, Yeshua.
That's a good plan.
Philippians 2. Philippians 2, verse 5. Eric.
It's the objective of all of us as humans to accomplish our purpose, on one hand, as being just human beings walking the face of the earth, to accomplish our destiny as individuals as to why we exist here and now, to fulfill the desire of Elohim. Why did he decide to create this project Earth, humanity? Why in the world would he have as part of his plan to send one from heaven to earth and then have him to be crucified and ripped apart, only to rise from the dead 3 days and 3 nights later, disappear back into the heavens and say he's coming back? Why is that the plan? Why did he come up with that? What's the purpose? And for this verse to say in Philippians, let this mind be in you, which was also in HaMashiach, Yeshua, we'd have to say, well, what mind was his? My particular perspective is that that mind is what is described by the 22 Hebrew letters of the Aleph Bet, the Hebrew alphabet. And then in specific, when you go back to the archaic, the ancient, the Paleo Hebrew, it's pictographic and shows us by images, as well as the meanings of words composed by those images, that this was his mind. And Yeshua saying only that he speaks the words, he hears his Father speaking, he only does the things he sees his Father doing. Then his mind, which is described by these 22 letters, is the very mind of Elohim, the very mind of Abeno Bahashamayim, our Father in the heavens. So this message that's encoded by the 22 Hebrew letters is a communique from the heavens to the earth. The Aleph Bet specifically is the heart of our Father, the mind of HaMashiach, which is supposed to be our mind and our heart. And so the study of these Hebraic, Hebrew things, words, culture, the Moedim, the festivals that we were commanded to shamar, observe, guard, keep, is to transform our minds and hearts' perspective, our entire being, to be echad, conformed to his, the Almighty, the Infinite One's image and likeness, although the weird paradox of that is that the Infinite One has no image and likeness, because he's the Infinite One who can't be described. But then he sent this one from his realm to our realm, who is the image and likeness, in human form, of the words which are in literary form. That's what this study is about, in my perspective. So Fred, you were describing a certain passion behind that for a reason, from your perspective.
Well, all of us have devoted ourselves to understanding Scripture. Our backgrounds and our education, our religious upbringing have given us a great respect for this book we call the Bible, the Scriptures. And we know for a fact that every time something is translated, there's a level of degradation. Something is lost. If our Father gave us these words in the beginning, if they were his heart and his message to his people, then every time man has altered that, even with the purpose of writing it in a new language or to give people an understanding of it that could not read those words as they were given, something has been lost. Men have added or subtracted something to those words. And so going back to the very earliest version, the words as he gave them has to be of great value, and anyone with a passion for the word would have an interest in seeing and hearing those words as they were given in the beginning. And we know that the Torah was not written in the flame letters of Hebrew that the Jewish people learned in Babylon. We know that there was an even earlier written version, that the way that Moshe received those words 1,500 years before Messiah was a different form than the way that we see them today. In fact, I understand in the Dead Sea Scrolls there's a copy of the book of Leviticus in the Paleo-Hebrew, and we see evidence of this earlier language, this written language, all over the land of Israel and outside of Israel. So there must be a benefit to going back even beyond the Hebrew Torah as we have it, and look at it in its most ancient form, and look at those pictographic letters and words, and understand and try to comprehend what may have been lost in the very first translation when it was translated from Paleo into the flame letters.
Which the study that we've done suggests that that was Daniel who did that. In that, the Archangel Gabriel, the archangel from the heavens, one of the big guys of the kingdom, is sent down to earth to speak to Daniel, and he says, Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time of Kufzadi, whatever that means. That's another part of the study. But Daniel was empowered and commissioned, instructed to accomplish hiding and sealing, to make general, anonymous, of unknown opinion, and to put as it were, seal it up like in a bottle, cast into the winds of time for some unknown extent of time, until such an occasion when we humans would have another access to these words, unseal, break them open, and reinterpret what the words mean with a clarity of understanding, which is to say, reverse the two actions Daniel was told to do, hide and seal, chatam and satam. Those are Hebrew words, that's another matter, but the point is what I'm saying. I think what Daniel was told to do was change the orthography, the shape of the letters, from the ancient paleo pictographic hieroglyphic word pictures into what's known as Chaldean flame letters, which are simply syllables and phonetics drawn by nebulous shapes like flames that have no particular meaning, although there are some Jewish authors that have written books showing that there is still yet an esoteric, which is to say a deep hidden meaning that you still can read into the modern flame letters, this other reality, this other messaging, even behind the scenes of the script orthography of those flame letters. And then when you get into the modern cursive, that's even another layer of obfuscation, of bewildering confusion away from the pictographic reality. And even Dr. Michael Brown agrees with this. He says that ever since at least those days of Daniel in 500 BC, all the Semitic alphabets and languages are simply random shapes without meaning. They're just syllables and phonetics.
So in doing that, sealing and hiding, Daniel was preserving, and yet making it obscure enough that it couldn't be understood.
So for some reason, it pleased Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the one who declared his identity and his composure, his mind, his heart, where he's at. That's the word Shem, which is translated name. When Moshe said, "Show me your glory," he passed by and he declared his name and his attributes he wanted us to reference him by. But it pleased him to take these very words of his self-identity and his message to his people, both Israel, his people, and humankind, his people, and obscure them, to blot out their comprehension. Why would he hide his own words? Because we as a people, both humans and we as a people, meaning his people of Israel, would not listen, chose to not hear, to disregard, to consider them worthless and vapid, void of any significance. But now, here we are, to regard his words as the most significant thing and the greatest treasure in the entire cosmos. We couldn't send a rocket to the far side of the Andromeda galaxy and bring back anything more valuable than the understanding of these very words, which he hid in this time capsule of the Semitic Hebrew alphabet. It's mind-blowing. It's astounding to realize that he buried the truth of his own identity and his own message to his people in the alphabet. So this study, what we're calling Erictology, that I'm calling that because the word Eric is the Hebrew word that means to appraise, assess, evaluate, to consider the worth of something that you otherwise had no regard for, couldn't, because of its jumble of disarray, and put it in an order, a row, put it in some sort of a registry, like what an accountant might do with a big pile of receipts, and how do you decide what this is saying and where this is going and why is it even in this condition anyway, and to make it comprehensible with a great value of importance, of appreciation. That's the word spelled Ayin Resh Kaf, sounds like the word Eric in Hebrew. And also the interesting thing, and it says in the book of Revelation that there is this city of Jerusalem that come down adorned as a bride prepared for her husband. This word prepared is also the word Eric. The bridesmaids that Yeshua gave this parable, 10 bridesmaids and 10 were prepared and 10 weren't. That word prepared is also the word Eric. To be prepared is to say set, like we had the observation of Pesach, Passover, just the other night. The preparation of the food, the table, the invitation of all the guests, and the making ready. And the Israelites were supposed to prepare themselves for the Exodus. 1500 BC approximately. That's the word Eric. To be prepared, ready, understanding the value and importance. So Erictology is a picture of the bride preparing herself without spot or wrinkle as the bridegroom beckons. The sound of the shofar, we can almost, as it were, feel that we're about to hear. So it feels like we're almost on the threshold of I might call it a universal change of status. You hear about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, you hear about the New Age movement, you hear about the New World Order, you hear about the progression of the equinoxes and shifting into this, that's the Aquarius, the water pourer. What does all that mean? Have you ever, you're from London, right, or England?
Yes.
Is there any talk of these kind of things over there?
Well, what's coming to mind as you're talking, Eric, is seeing the words rather than reading the words gives you a clearer understanding. If I can see what the word means for myself, then it's not just like I'm reading a word. This brings out a sight that when you read, it doesn't get in your heart as when you see the word. Yeshua was the living word, and we see and read what he was like. But can we see the written words that we read like they should be seen? So in Erictology, I'm starting to see each letter and understanding the word with my heart rather than just reading it. It becomes a personal knowledge of knowing him. What was Yeshua mindful? I want the mindfulness of Yeshua. I want to live and walk my life like Yeshua did. So Yeshua was the living word. I want to know the life that's in the word, not just by reading it, but having understanding when I see what the word says.
So for you to do that, you're not just remembering something I said or reading a book that Fred wrote and saying, oh yeah, I got to recall to my mind all these details and points. It sounds like you're describing a personal experience of your eyes seeing these words with an understanding that surpasses translation. So you're not memorizing somebody else's study, you are having those very words, the life that's in those words, impact your inner being. And then if you look at John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word, through this Word was projected or manifest the entire universe. And then this Word became flesh, human, which is this, Yeshua, the guy who lived 2,000 years ago. So humanity is itself composed of this word. And in other videos we've talked about this, I suggest that that word is actually the 22-letter Hebrew alphabet. That is the word by which the universe was made, which became flesh, which became a human, and therefore we as humans with body made of earth, we are composed of this alphabet. It's as if you look at the periodic table and there's 200 something elements, right? How many was in there? In the periodic table?
Keeps growing. I think it's up to 107.
107. Okay, I thought it was more than that. Anyway, the point is, everything that exists in the universe, we say, is composed of the atoms that we call the elements of the 107 varieties. So everything, you could pick up a piece of grass or a piece of dirt or a piece of stone, and it's like, oh, you're going to find simply those elements. So too, you can break anything apart on the far side of the galaxy to this right here and say, somehow, the 22 Hebrew letters cause that to exist. So too our very thoughts are fit to the 22 Hebrew letters. And that because it says in John 1 that this word is Elohim, means that he who is infinite and incomprehensible put himself into a finite comprehensible format in this alphabet. So as we look at this alphabet, we're actually looking past it and beholding him who otherwise can't be beheld. So if you can appreciate or comprehend at any level, at any depth, the real meaning of these 22 letters, you are looking at the words written by these 22 letters and actually beholding him in his purest form of communication, addressing your very inner being, your nephesh, your soul, your mind, your heart, which is also the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So it fits like a hand to a glove, your human essence with his essence of being Elohim, the creator who created it to be just this. And therefore the translations of Greek, English, even modern interpretation of teachings from even the most brilliant sages, rabbis, professors, pale in the comparison of you fit to his communication one-to-one, which is the beholding of his very face.
Wonderful. Paleo.
Paleo means wonderful, hidden, marvelous, astounding, mystery.
It makes sense that the bride of Messiah would have a passion for every aspect of him. To reject any part of him would indicate a lack of pure love and devotion. Something I've been astounded by in my life is the love of my wife, who knows me better than I do. I mean, she knows my story, my history. She knows everything about me. And if we have a love for Messiah, then every aspect of him would be of interest to us. And so to hear that there's some earlier version of these words, or something about him that is a new discovery to be found, and to reject that would be very unnatural for a bride who is passionate and really in love with her Messiah.
I won't understand.
Yeah, we want to understand. Absolutely.
One thing that I found, which changed my entire life, in looking at this alphabet, and I say alphabet because that's Hebrew, in Greek it's alpha, beta, in English it's alphabet. It's a 22 letters composition by which all words are written. I found that the lettering sequence is very particularly orchestrated by design that matches what's called the Moedim. Go to Leviticus 23 in the Bible, in the Torah, the first 5 books. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Leviticus is the 3rd book of the Old Testament. Some people have no Old Testament in their Bible. I know of a few people. We were just hearing about in Burundi, they had no Old Testament. It was brought to them recently. I know some Greek Orthodox friends who have no Old Testament in their Bible.
Wow.
But the 3rd book of the Old Testament, Leviticus 23, the creator of the heavens and the earth, Yod, He, Vav, He, the 4 letters of his name. Some pronounce it as Yahuwah. He said, these are my ornamentation. It's translated, my festivals, my feasts, my witnesses, my testimonies. These are the things that I have created for myself, to adorn myself in purest form of majesty, bearing witness of my identity. And that's what's known as the Jewish holidays. Passover, the week of unleavened bread, 50 days of counting, then in the fall the blowing of trumpets, a day at the first day of the 7th month, then Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, then 7 days of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and then the last day of what's called Shemini Atzeret, the 8th stoppage gathering assembly. These 7 festivals, he ornamented himself, adorned himself. The word edi is choice, best treasure. He bejeweled himself. The creator of the heavens and the earth, who provided this man walking amongst us, Yeshua, his incarnate form, bejeweled himself with these Moedim, these festivals, which for 2,000 years we have been told are detestable garbage and eliminated, eradicated, done away with. How can such a thing be?
That's great.
Why would the people that say they love him find his things that he found to be his best to be absolutely detestable?
Hallelujah. Praise God.
How can that be? And then for us to talk about this is to bring back, to make an issue out of the matters that he said were the most important to his heart.
His best gifts.
And he wanted to clothe, to adorn, to put a robe on his own people just like him, in his image and likeness, for us to walk, to guard, to regard these words, these festivals, these Moedim, these witnesses and testimonies, because that's what he said. And yet for 2,000 years, and in some cases 3,000 years, we have been told it just ain't so. But it is so. We've been lied to by our greatest and most respected preachers and teachers for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so this that we are even speaking into the camera to put on the website for people to say, what the heck is going on here? What are you guys up to? What are you doing? Why? This is our attempt to explain why all this other stuff is going on that we're doing.
It is bringing back stuff that's been robbed from us. As previous Christians, we had no idea what the feasts were, but now we have a meeting time with Yahuwah that he can reveal himself to us. At these feasts we can share his presence and know the intimacy of his obedience and the blessing in our life. No longer having to fight with Satan ourselves, but having him as our rear guard because we're in obedience just to obey his Moedims and the simple instructions he's given us, which are so easy and pleasant to do rather than hard.
Hear, hear.
There's an interesting thing. You had a comment about culture the other day, didn't you? About the way to regain culture is by changing language.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well, that was a ploy of like Alexander the Great. I don't know if I made comment on that. Conquer and change their language.
Conquer and change their language. Conquer and change their customs, their holidays, their traditions. The people of Israel, Am Israel, Chai, be brought back to life, to live, is to restore the culture, to restore the language, to restore the traditions we talked about that we were told to imitate that Pesach was to be an imitation throughout all your generations forever, yet the word is translated, not imitate, chok, chet, kuf, it's translated law, ordinance, decree, but you look at the dictionary, it means imitate, imitate what happened on that first Exodus with Moshe, 1500 BC, throughout your generations. And it was translated law. Okay, then we don't need to do it because that was nailed to the cross.
So if we're going to imitate Mashiach, we'll keep the feast.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll keep Shabbat.
For the sake of being told in translations that it was a terrible, rotten, horrible thing, our very treasure was stolen from us, and we willingly and gladly throughout my whole life is, ooh, sure, push that away, we don't need that. Because it was misrepresented, we have failed to take advantage of the wonderful provisions of power, strength, health, wisdom, insight. Everything that was provided through the very things he gave us was lost because our enemies misrepresented to us what their value was on account of some religious dogma. Our enemies have prevailed all these years, and he made it so. I'm not blaming the devil. The creator of the heavens and the earth said if we don't want his stuff, he'll take it away and let us have what we wanted, which is the lie. And so for all these years, we've been living the lie, believing the lie, because we had no heart. So this is coming back with a heart, which I see as the fulfilling of numerous scriptures. What did you say, 100 places, 100 different texts?
100 chapters.
100
we've found
chapters
in the Bible from beginning to end that deal with the concept of the restoration of the kingdom.
Which is this,
Which is
coming,
this.
bringing back the
Coming
culture
back,
as his
exactly.
people.
Restoration by definition is going back to the beginning, wiping away all the changes that have occurred since the beginning, all the misunderstandings, all of men's ideas that have been added and subtracted, and going back to the original plan, the original instructions, the original words, the original alphabet.
So this is a monumentous threshold. We stand, I believe, at the edge of the 7th millennium, according to the reckoning of some.
Yeah.
For whatever that really means in the whole continuum, we don't know, but there's at least this picture of 7-day week, 7,000 years, a day for 1,000 years. It feels like we're at the edge. It feels like we're right where these letters Pei Zadi line up in the alphabet, which is to say Pei Zadi is the word pizza, which is to explode or detonate, but it's also a mouth that opens. Yeshua shows up in Revelation 19, a sword coming out of his mouth. There's a word for sword which also means blossoming or sparkling. His words coming out of his mouth suddenly blossom, suddenly take on a countenance of sparkling, we're going, wow, these words are so incredible. He was speaking Hebrew. Wasn't English. I dare say it wasn't Greek. But perhaps this event of seeing the sword coming out of his mouth is us appreciating what he said from the very beginning. And that if we stand at the precipice, the event of, well, read Revelation 19, what's about to happen. At that point, the rulers of the world are slaughtered, and a 1,000-year reign of his jurisdiction with peace and sanity is set up. If that's where we are, then we're right at the edge of the entire world system changing. Now, there's a few other pieces to the story, but what I'm saying is that if we stand at the alphabetic letter sequence right about Pei Zadi, Pei is that which opens up. So Yeshua was in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights, and then the tomb opened up, Zadi, a picture of the resurrection sprouting back to life, and then Kuf ascending up unto the Resh status, the head status. And I believe that his story, Aleph through Tav, that phase of his story right there is also a model, a fractal pattern of the restoration of the confederacy of the Israelite tribes, the 12 tribes. The resurrecting of the tribes, Zadi, the ascending into their position of being his people, Kuf, and then ruling in Emet, truth, Chesed, tender loving kindness, Zadika, righteousness, victory, deliverance, and salvation, and Mishpat, balanced scales of justice and right ruling. That's the reign of his kingdom. Yahweh even says that Mishpat and Zadika are the foundation of his throne. If we're not doing what he said, we can pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, all we want, and it won't happen unless we are living his heart. I think speaking his words and conducting his moedim are an integral part. How many people with a pure heart have asked, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, please? What does that look like? I believe that's what this is. This is that happening.
Daniel described a stone uncut with man's hands, a seemingly insignificant thing, coming down the mountain and striking the powers of the world at their feet and turning them into dust that blows away in the wind, and then growing to fill the whole earth.
So it has to be a pure stone, not cut with human hands.
That's right, yeah.
And the word feet is regal, where we get the word regulation, regal, relegated, regalia, and religion. So somehow it hits the kingly regal and the religion of humankind, topples it, shatters it, throws it to the wind, and this uncut stone, which looks like the Hebraic mind, turns into this mountain that will not yield its sovereignty to another. It is the last kingdom. The bad guys don't get to rule until the end. That's a fake story.
That's right.
Fake news.
That's right.
We've had fake
That's
news
right.
in the Bible translations now for quite some time.
We're used to that.
That's right. It's time for the restoration of the kingdom, and we can start it right now, where we are, by hearing these words and doing them. Yeah.
And unfortunately for some, it's not convincing the Jews to become Christians, nor is it convincing the Christians to become Jews. It's coming back to the real meaning of the words that Yahweh laid out on the page for us to read and take to heart, and having our minds transformed to walk like he walked, think like he thought, conduct ourselves echad with him. Real quick here, before we close up, the name Yod He Vav He, 4 letters that are pictures that mean something. You've got the Yod, which is this shape like this or like this. It's this hand that grabs, this hand that works, that makes. So he who made the heavens and the earth is exemplified by this letter Yod. The letter He, if I put my hands out like this, is like light shining. It's an expression. The letter He is pronounced as Ha, means the. It's to point to reveal. So the revelation, the expression of the Creator, Yod He, would be the Creator and His Torah. His Torah, His expressions of what the truth is, who He is, what the relationship between humanity and Elohim is supposed to be. The letter Vav is a nail or a hook or some type of a bridge of attachment device, and yet it's the 6th letter, and there's a saying that the number 6 is the number for man. So here's a man who is the incarnation, the manifestation in human form of the He, which is the Torah, which is the expression of Yod, the Creator. And then the 4th letter is another He, just like the 2nd letter, which is a He, Yod He Vav He. And Yeshua, when he was here, just before he took off, koofed up into the heavens and disappeared, but he said he's going to come back as Resh Shin Tav, that he would not leave us alone. He would send us his Ruach, the Comforter, to lead us into the truth. So this 2nd He is a picture of the Ruach that identically matches the 2nd He, which is the Torah. So the Torah and the Ruach validate each other with exactly the same voice, but Yeshua is the one who's validated by these 2 witnesses. So here you have this Vav connector. You were saying something about that a few minutes ago, were you? This Vav connector and the 2 witnesses on either side of him that validated his, as it were, his DNA, his identity, the truth of who he is. And then you have this Yod, which is the hand of the Creator. So in Yod He Vav He, you have Yeshua saying, I only do what I see my Father doing, so Vav has to equal Yod. If we assume that the Father is the hand of the Creator, Vav equals Yod, and then the 2 He's is the Torah and the Ruach, both of which validate the testimony of Yeshua. So you have 4 voices, what's built into creation that we can see, what's expressed in the Torah that we read, what Yeshua HaMashiach said and did as he walked as a human, that's the Vav, and then the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit that he left us to guide us and lead us on this Yashar Derek, the straight path, of walking the Torah in our lives, in our expression. So you have Yod He Vav He. So it's not just a name, it's not just a pronunciation, it's this regard of these four voices which have to be echad, singular, and when all four line up, did this little thing. If you have four voices and they all line up, echad, singular, that's the truth. If one of them's out of whack, he's got to line up with the other voices. No, all the four voices got to be singular, echad. Yahweh echad, that's the Shema. Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh echad.
And that's why he told us to repeat that often, to keep that in mind, that if any one of those pickets is out of sync, we've got it wrong. He is echad. His spirit lines up with his Torah, lines up with his Messiah, lines up with him. He is echad, and we stopped saying that. We were told to repeat that often, to discuss it with our children and our families, to keep that firmly in mind. Had we done that, we would have never gotten off track.
So the interesting thing is to take his name away, as you said. 7,000 times was it that his name was erased approximately 2,300 years ago by the making of the Septuagint, 300 BC approximately. 7,000 times his name was removed, and his name is not just the inutterable tetragrammaton. It's a plumb line of saying, how do you know you're right? How do you know you're listening to the truth? How do you know you have the right voice? That your spirit is in line with the true, like timing a car, when you know that all those cylinders are firing perfect timing, is when the creation, the truth that's embedded within the very being and fabric and design of creation is in perfect harmony, alignment with the understanding of the words of the Torah, which is in perfect understanding with the true, legitimate heart and words and behavior of the Mashiach, Yeshua, not the Christian Jesus, but the real Hebraic Yahushua Mashiach, and that's in alignment with the Ruach HaKodesh, and all four are exactly synchronized. That's Yod He Vav He. And that concept has been lost for at least these 2,300 years, and probably even before that. This is an astounding occasion. As I say, I believe we stand at the threshold of the door of entry, like the people of Israel, the 12 tribes, standing at the edge of the Yarden, the Jordan River, about to enter in. They were, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1, they stood right there at the edge, about to enter. I feel like this is where we are.
I agree.
And so our expressions, the things we're doing, the things we're saying, the things we're trying to put on video, plays into Jeremiah 31, I think it's verse 25, where as soon as Ephraim wakes up and he slaps his, daggone it, what have I done? I'm such an idiot. Ephraim says, after I had rebelled, I repented and came back, and he says, Yahweh, please bring me back, and I will come back. And Yahweh says, make for yourselves billboards, signposts, to conduct your heart on the path it's supposed to be walking. So we should bring ourselves, speak to ourselves, and encourage ourselves to do the things he said. That was his instruction to Ephraim, the prodigal son. This is where we are. The day when this verse is being manifest is present tense. Here it is, 2018, and I believe it's Ephraim waking up. Yahweh is, right before that, Yahuwah said, is Ephraim such a delightful child, or my favorite son, that whenever I think of him, my heart grows fonder and fonder. Soon as Ephraim's attitude changed, his attitude changed, and the world seen change. That's where we're at.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Amen.
So is that clear, Lenore? Have you any other things to throw in before we close this video off?
I thought that was a very good study.
Just don't take our word for the amount or the number of elements in the periodic table. I think we're a little low there.
Oh.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.